It is 1564. The fells of Cumbria, England, are still wet from the night's storm. A shepherd walks the hillside and finds a fallen tree, its roots torn clean from the earth. In the exposed mud beneath lies something he has never encountered. But heavy. It doesn't burn. He drags it across the back of his hand and it marks him, dark, clean, and utterly unfamiliar. Not quite lead. Darker than lead. Heavier in the hand. He has no word for it. Neither does anyone else. Not yet. Within a decade, this unremarkable lump of carbon would become the most closely guarded substance in England. For most of human history, scribes worked with thin rods of lead, or lead alloyed with tin, dragged across papyrus or vellum. The line they left was faint, silvery, and barely usable. Artists pushed the medium further. By the 15th century, a technique known as silverpoint had become a hallmark of mastery, a fine wire drawn across specially prepared paper, leaving lines of extraordinary delicacy and precision. Leonardo da Vinci used it. Albrecht Dürer used it. Raphael used it. The problem was that silverpoint was almost impossible to erase. That phrase, almost impossible to erase, deserves to be held for a moment, because it tells you everything about where craft was at that point in history. The stylus was not a sketching tool. It was a tool of commitment. You did not explore an idea with silverpoint. You declared it. Every mark you made you kept. Then a shepherd in northwest England changed the terms entirely. The black substance pulled from the Cumbrian earth was not lead. It was graphite, a crystalline form of pure carbon, and nothing like it had ever been found in Europe before. It left a darker mark than lead. It could be sharpened to a fine point. And with some effort, it could be erased. Wrapped first in string, and later enclosed in hollowed cedar, it became the first pencil. Word spread with remarkable speed. Merchants used it to write orders. Shepherds used it to mark their sheep. Artists used it to sketch without committing. It was quite suddenly indispensable. Queen Elizabeth I's advisors understood the stakes immediately. The crown moved to control the Borrowdale mine. Access was restricted. The mine was permitted to operate for only a few weeks each year, keeping supply artificially scarce and prices extraordinarily high. The most powerful government in the world was sitting on one of the most consequential industrial discoveries of the century, and it knew exactly what it had. Restriction did not kill demand. It simply drove demand underground. Mine workers were bribed. Traders packed graphite into lead-lined boxes to disguise its weight. Middlemen moved across the North Sea into Germany, France, and the Netherlands, where pencil makers were waiting and desperate for reliable supply. The crown kept tightening its grip. In 1752, Parliament passed an act making the theft of Borrowdale graphite a criminal offense, punishable by hard labor, punishable by transportation. Sentenced to the other side of the world for stealing pencil lead. And still the smuggling continued, because the profits were extraordinary. Borrowdale graphite was worth more per ounce than most metals. The most powerful government in the world was losing a war against people who simply wanted to write things down. Cut off from reliable Borrowdale graphite, craftsmen in the city of Nuremberg improvised with remarkable ingenuity. They blended lower-grade graphite with sulfur, antimony, and resin. The result was inferior to the British product, but it was good enough. By 1662, Nuremberg had become the pencil capital of the world. Thousands of workers, dozens of workshops, an entire economy built around a small stick of compressed black powder inside a cedar sleeve. What the Nuremberg story rarely mentions is that it was built on smuggled graphite, on a gray economy that Parliament had spent decades trying to shut down. And it was shaped decisively by one man who had no business building it at all. Friedrich Stettler was a craftsman operating outside the guild system, and in 17th century Nuremberg, that mattered enormously. Pencil making was legally divided between two separate guilds. Lead cutters shaped the graphite, carpenters enclosed it in wood, and crossover between the two was strictly prohibited. Stettler ignored the rules. He worked out how to take a pencil from raw material to finished product in a single operation. The guilds fought him for years. He kept going. The name Stettler is still printed on pencils today, though he rarely gets the credit his defiance deserves. The man whose formula is inside every pencil currently being made is someone almost nobody has heard of. His name was Nicolas Jacques-Conti. He was a French military scientist. He had lost his left eye in a hydrogen gas explosion earlier in his career, and in the 1790s he was serving in the army of Napoleon Bonaparte. The military arithmetic was stark. Napoleon was at war with Britain. Britain controlled the world's only known supply of high-quality graphite. France was entirely cut off, and the French army needed pencils, for maps, for engineering drawings, for military correspondence. Conti was ordered to find a solution. He found one in 6 days. He ground graphite, even low-grade, impure graphite, into a fine powder, mixed it with clay, and fired the mixture in a kiln. The result could be shaped into rods, encased in wood, and used to write. But the discovery ran deeper than a wartime fix. By adjusting the ratio of clay to graphite, you could control the hardness of the line. More clay produced a harder, lighter mark. More graphite produced a softer, darker one. For the first time, a pencil could be graded. The H and B system still used today, 2H, HB, 4B, traces directly back to Nicolas Jacques-Conti. He patented the process in 1795. He never became famous for it. The brand that became a household name, Faber-Castell, built its empire on Conti's formula. Conti laid the foundation. Faber-Castell named the building. The man who lays the foundation rarely gets to name the building. In America, graphite was plentiful but impure. American pencils smudged. They were considered inferior to their European counterparts, and nobody could agree on why, until Henry David Thoreau could. Before he was the man who lived alone in the woods and wrote one of the most celebrated books in American literature, Thoreau worked in his father's pencil factory in Concord, Massachusetts. He studied the problem. He spent time at the Harvard Library. He experimented. He arrived, through research or parallel discovery, at Conti's clay graphite formula and adapted it for the lower-grade graphite available in New England. The Thoreau pencil factory became the best in America. Their pencils finally competed with the European ones. And then Thoreau stepped away. He said he had no interest in making a better pencil once he had already done it. There were other things to think about, other things to write about. In 1845, he went to Walden Pond. He wrote, of course, with a pencil. For most of the pencil's history, the eraser was a separate object. People used breadcrumbs, stale bread, and small blocks of natural rubber. If you were writing with a pencil, your eraser lived somewhere else entirely. In 1858, a Philadelphia stationer named Hyman Lipman had what seemed, in retrospect, an obvious idea. He attached a small eraser to the end of a pencil and patented it. He later sold that patent for $100,000, an extraordinary sum at the time. The Supreme Court eventually invalidated the patent on the grounds that combining two existing objects did not constitute a novel invention. The man who purchased the patent lost his investment. The eraser-tipped pencil survived. The pencil, as we know it today, was complete. The pencil still needed an American identity. Joseph Dixon was a Massachusetts inventor who had spent decades obsessed with graphite. Not pencils specifically, but graphite itself. Crucibles for steel furnaces, lubricants for machinery, powder for electrotyping. He understood graphite the way a chemist understands an element. After the Civil War, his company built the first truly industrial pencil factory in America, machines capable of cutting, shaping, and finishing tens of thousands of pencils every single day. Dixon died in 1869 and never saw what came next. In 1873, his company introduced a new line named after the graphite mines near Lake Champlain in upstate New York. A rare place called Ticonderoga, a Mohawk word, a Revolutionary War fort, and a name that sounded unmistakably like America. The yellow paint arrived in 1913. The green and gold ferrule followed. And the number 2 pencil, the one found in every classroom, every exam room, every pencil case in America, was a Ticonderoga. Around 14 billion pencils are produced every year. The average pencil can draw a line approximately 35 miles long, or write around 45,000 words. And the formula inside every single one of them, that precisely calibrated ratio of graphite to clay, fired in a kiln, is still essentially the formula that Nicolas Jacques Conti developed in 1795. A one-eyed French soldier, working under military pressure, in 6 days. From a shepherd on a wet hillside to one of the most ubiquitous objects in human history, the pencil did not arrive through a single genius or a single moment of invention. It arrived through centuries of need, smuggling, defiance, improvisation, and one French soldier who was simply told to solve a problem and did exactly that. History is everywhere. Sometimes it's in your hand right now.